Jeff, Marianne, and Chuck.
You have Michael and Rebecca.
Let's see. There we go. Yeah, Rebecca. Hello, Rebecca. Hey, Lona. Hey, Michael. All right. Well, let's get started. I'm excited to lead the discussion tonight. I've had the opportunity to participate several discussions and recorded calls over the past 3 or 4 weeks that have taken my understanding of the fifth fundamental in a new direction. And tonight, I'm hopeful that the discussion is going to clarify my understanding rather than me just inflicting my confusion on everybody else. But with that, why don't we jump into this? Okay, agenda for tonight. I'd like to focus this at a level 2+ kind of understanding. We'll talk for a little bit about the fundamental from the Alpine Technical Manual, the skills concept, and then I want to share some things I picked up from Jim Shaw writings and recordings the past week. Then I want to talk about the pressures and forces that we regulate, then do a couple of level 2 skier kind of MAs and focus on looking at flexion extension. And then if time allows, start discussing the fifth fundamental beyond flexion extension movements and some ideas for next week as well. And we can add to those at the end of the call tonight if we like. So what is the fundamental? You know, I like calls that I get on where they spend some time focusing on first the Alpine Technical Manual and then bringing things beyond that. So, you know, interestingly, the Alpine Technical Manual actually says the fundamental is controlling the magnitude of pressure. And then it goes on to specifically mention rotation, edge angle, extension and flexion, fore aft, and ski to ski as ways to control that. And Jonathan Blue is a contributing author and Alpine committee chair when the Alpine Technical Manual was published. And then 2015, the Skills Concept and Skiing Fundamentals article came out by Jonathan Blue. And it changed it a bit. And it said the fundamental is regulate the magnitude of pressure created through ski-snow interaction. And I wanted to get people's reaction to this. I feel like in the Rocky Mountain, the examiners and trainers pretty exclusively use the regulate language, but what are everybody else's thoughts here?
I think regulate is really the appropriate term because it depends on the, again, ski snow interactions. It's like it depends on what the snow is like, what the ski is, what the slope is like. So I think regulate really is more refined than control.
Yeah, I think so too. I wondered if that was maybe the point of the skills concept that came out a year after the Alpine Technical Manual, was provide a little more clarity and address things that were brought up. Any other thoughts?
I still like to use manage. So I feel like regulate seems a little third party-ish, you know what I mean? Like I feel like manage is more hands-on, but that's my personal opinion. It's not.
Chuck, I was gonna say I like manage better, but I'm not sure giving it a little bit of thought, I'm not sure I do. And here's why. To me, manage is a reaction to what's happening. It's the, oh shit, I'm in trouble. Mm-hmm. I've now got to manage this. I've gotten myself into what I don't know, a mogul field that's Formica, like it is here in the East. Oh shit, I've got to now manage all of what I'm doing, versus a regulate is you're actively controlling the magnitude. You're the one that's in control, versus management, which is almost a afterthought or a reaction. That's just my
I think
thought.
they can be used, and I'm 100% behind you, NJ. I think in a lot of ways it can be done changeable. I think to manage in terms of monitoring what's actually happening versus, well, one of the ways I like that, and I brought this up to Gordon, is one of the ways I like to think about this fundamental is that like you have 4 dials on a dashboard, and you need to turn those dials in a way that's going to be managing your ability to make ski snow interaction as we go downhill, right? So I got to monitor what's happening, and at the same time, I need to manage those little knobs. And in that case, regulate is probably the same thing. You turn a little bit up here and turn a little bit down here, you know. Maybe I need a little less edge and a little bit more rotation, a little bit more outside ski pressure or something like that. I mean, we can manage all that. I just think manage to me seems like it's more fence riding, but you know, again, this is my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think
I will deny you. I will deny ever saying it.
I think one of the better terms might be refine.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know, another way I can think of it is like you're like the control guy inside of a music studio, and you're pushing all these little dials and sliders up and down, kind of regulate the amplitude of whatever's happening.
You know, I think the more important thing is I like the idea of you use the other 4 fundamentals to help you, whatever adjective you want to use, the magnitude of pressure. Regulate, control, manage. I mean, it's semantics, right? I don't think you want to get too hung up on what word you use, but I like the idea that you're using the other 4 fundamentals to help you do the right thing to regulate the magnitude of pressure.
And the right verb can be tough there because you have things that aren't under your control, like the slope, the snow, and things that you are, like the pressure arising from your actions from what you do with the other fundamentals.
Right, but you can only control what you do. You can't really control what the snow does. The snow is going to react to what you do. Granted, the conditions are going to be different, but you know, that's, I don't know.
How about recognizing and adjusting to the magnitude of pressure?
Yeah, I think we could waste a quick hour on the language.
Well, that's my point. It's like, it's just a word. We all kind of understand what you're doing. So let's not get hung up on the word. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I 100% agree. It's whatever your preference is.
So
I don't want to interject any of what my feelings are. That's just how I feel.
So that's good stuff. And Chuck was kind enough to share with me something that Jim Shaw wrote to him. And I've put this up here. I've summarized it a little bit, but Jim's thoughts were that there were 2 parts to the fifth. The first is a bump or landing that we manage and regulate through flexion and extension movements. And Jim's observation was perhaps that's what most instructors think of as the 5th fundamental. You know, for me, definitely earlier on, definitely when I was pursuing my level 1 certification and even during a lot of my level 2 certification, that's pretty much how I viewed the fundamental. And then he goes on to say the second part of the fundamental is forces created through and regulated by the application of the other fundamentals, and through the management of the ski-snow interaction, we manage the forces that cause us to turn. Chuck, I know you had some specific thoughts on that in your exchange with him. Oh, Chuck's muted right now. Maybe he's in a bad spot. What do you guys think there? Would you agree with that comment that most instructors think of the fifth as mostly flexion, extension, and reacting to the terrain?
I don't think they think about it. I think they think about the other 4.
I would agree with you, Gordon. I think as a first blush, when you say magnitude of pressure, it's like, oh yeah, if I'm in the bumps, it's like, you know, how do I manage that pressure? And it's more of a flex and extension thing. I got to absorb at the right time and extend at the right time. But reality is tipping or twisting can change magnitude dramatically.
Yeah, definitely. And then also for me, as I'm getting further into this, the dirt of the other 4 fundamentals is huge on regulating pressure. The timing of when we do our flexion and extension, the rate at which we rotate the skis. So
Yeah, I think
I agree
Go
with
ahead.
Scott. I agree with Scott. I think it's an afterthought. When we're teaching, it's an afterthought. When we're skiing on our own, it's brought more to the forefront. It's something that we actively think about. At least I try to. I try to understand what my intent is. I try to understand, what the snow conditions are and what my intent for skiing is going to be, and when I need to flex and extend and do all of those other things. And I hope I'm still, I guess I'm developing it, but I'm still trying to blend that into my teaching as well.
I think this really is an afterthought, and it's kind of more a reaction than an action for most skiers. It really is the oh shit kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think
I
everything
never
you do creates magnitude of pressure, though. The first 4 fundamentals all create magnitude of pressure.
yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you were done.
No, it's fine. I totally agree that I think it's a it's sort of a result of all the other 4 fundamentals.
Cool. So sorry about that. It took me a while to find my microphone. Yes, 100% agree with everything said. What started the interaction with me and Jim was I just asked him a quick question or made a quick comment. And I said, and I know some of you have heard me say this before, I think that fundamental is a little bit backwards, where the only thing that we should be really concentrating on is the ski-snow interaction. And that when people hear it, including our fellow instructors, they see the pressure part of it, and they immediately are right. And the fact that it's in the pressure realm, they're automatically focused on the pressure and how to relieve and pressure was what do we do when we want to get rid of pressure? We flex and extend. I mean, that's what the other 2 fundamentals are about. But really, it comes down to that ski-snow interaction. That was what got that conversation started. And he broke it down for me in a way that I still had already come to the conclusion that he gave back to me, but it was still nice to have confirmation. The other thing is there was something else he brought to me last night, which was, what do 99% of our students, our guests, think about when they're going down the hill?
Not falling.
Going too
Having
fast.
fun.
Staying alive.
How to slow the F down. right?
What's that, Chuck?
How to slow down.
Yeah.
That's what they concentrated on, how to slow down. So they're not thinking, we as instructors have the luxury of thinking about, oh, well, we have to engage higher in the arc and we want to do that. Really doesn't slow us down. What it does is speed us up. When our guests are all the time are going, I just want to slow down, man. I want to be able to be in control so I can, and slowing down is a top priority there. So, and I was like, you forget these little simple things, dive deep into these, into these discussions about the nuances of the word regulate, But the fact of the matter is that we need to focus on what our guest needs are, and guest needs are to slow down. They want to slow down. So cool. Sorry.
So Marianne, I know you did. Did anybody else get a chance to look at the Zoom meeting that Jim Shaw and Josh Fogg were on?
Yeah, I did.
I listened to it. I had seen that a while ago, but it was nice to see it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That really struck me. I really like the idea of looking at ski snow interaction as a way to explain the skiing and think about what they're teaching them. Especially the person he was watching, it was really tempting to jump into error detection and correction, but if you really focused on what his skis were doing, I think you might describe differently what he needed to do differently. Did anybody else feel that way?
Yeah, I did. When he, I'll say, digressed to that as to how, not how he goes about it, but how he can sort through, the 7 things, the 10 things he's seeing. I thought that was pretty interesting, and I wrote it down to copy it. And if you can figure out what the skis are doing, then that kind of builds the platform. So I liked it. I didn't like their interaction because one was very slow and he was very fast, and the slides never changed.
Yeah, the slides were a little rudimentary. That was especially interesting to me because I've heard from a number of examiners that in doing MA, especially for exams, they didn't really care if you focused on ski performance or body performance or started with it as long as you got to both. That was a little different take on it. So,
it's interesting
Rebecca,
you bring that up because I know you guys have heard this from me, but those 3 things that I look for in MA, what moves first, what body part moves first, what ski moves first. Is the skier offensive or defensive in nature? And how does that affect their ability to make a turn? Then the last one was straight from this video. Where does the ski engage and when does it disengage? I think if you cover all 3 of those in a level 3 MA, you're miles ahead of everybody else.
What was that second one?
Jen Metz brought up, are the skiers offensive in their turns or are they defensive? And most of the time they're defensive. And then how does the defensive, when they're making a defensive style turn, how does that affect what the skis are doing? So, and we know by watching a lot of the skiers, anybody who's level 5 and below, 6 and below, they can be very, very defensive, where their only way to slow down in their minds is to turn the ski sideways. And that makes it very defensive. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
So, Rebecca, you started talking about this earlier, but what are the pressures and forces that we regulate? The first part specifically, the forces created by terrain and snow.
Well, it depends on the quality of the snow, the firmness, the terrain. Is it very steep? Is it like uneven? Is it a groomed terrain? Is it an ungroomed terrain? So I think that the ski snow interactions really depend on not so much the skis as the snow. It depends a bit on the skis insofar as depending on the kind of snow, different kind of skis may be easier or harder to well, I don't know, manipulate is more hands, but to sort of manage, like if you're on eastern terrain and you have big fat skis, you're going to have a harder time. If you have really slalom skis and you're on fresh powder, you're going to have a hard time. So it depends on the kind of skis you have and the kind of snow that is there as to what body parts are going to do what. Does that make sense?
I mean, lots of good stuff on there. I was on a call a couple of weeks ago where we had an extensive discussion about equipment and managing pressure, how stiffer skis, higher side cut skis change how we have to use them to manage the pressure. Other things, one thing I remember pretty explicitly from last year was up skiing with some younger instructors who were enthusiastically going down our steepest run back in the Cirque. And it goes down quite steep. It's over a 50-degree pitch. And at the bottom, there was a quick uphill pitch of about 15 feet. And I watched one of the younger guys blast down the hill, pick up a bunch of speed and come into the uphill. And he didn't manage the pressure very well because his skis slowed way down and his body didn't. So he did a hard face plant out of the heels of both skis. So yeah, parts of the terrain, side hills, compressions, uphills. The second part of the fifth, what kind of forces are created and regulated by the other fundamentals?
You mean things like gravity?
Sure. How does gravity affect us? How do we regulate it?
I think you can rotate it through rotation as one example. I think you can rotate it through edging, or you can control it through edging. Those two just come to the top of my head.
Yeah, so gravity, to the extent we're pointing our skis straight downhill, we're going to experience much greater acceleration than if they're pointed more across the hill.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Just like ground
And much
resistance
less
force.
pressure on the skis. You go straight down a hill, turn them sideways, then you get your pressure.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So yeah, interesting thing there. When we point the skis downhill, we're managing pressure by creating a ton of potential energy, which rapidly turns into
Speed and momentum.
yeah, momentum, and it creates a lot of potential force to deal with when we try to accelerate in a different direction.
But then can I have a comment here about forces?
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like, though, if you go against forces, like against gravity, you're creating perhaps inefficiency, right? If your skis are intentionally supposed to go downhill, but you have students who are holding back, and you're trying to lean up the hill, you're trying to tip, you're going against the forces, which is like, you're not ideal in the usage of your skis, and the fundamentals there would apply. So you'd say, okay, how are you going against the forces that's to your disadvantage? How can we improve that efficiency in working with the forces to be more efficient with the forces of nature, based on the terrain, based on the snow, based on the steepness? Do you know what? Yeah, Gordon, I'll let you chat about that.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's one I talk about with my guests all the time. Is it going to be better to fight gravity and try to use our skis like a snowplow or a snow scraper to slow us down, or should we try and get them pointing across the hill and back up to slow us down? I mean, it's another way of managing gravity. What other kinds of things? So I did some looking into different kinds of forces. One of the questions I've always been trying to answer is, what is it that really slows us down when we're turning our skis sideways? A lot of people answer friction, but I looked up the different kinds of forces, and type of force that we would manage is called applied force. That's the force that an object applies on us. So when we turn our skis sideways and start pushing snow, we're creating a lot of applied force pushing back at us. With our skis sideways, they're going to try and push more snow aside. I had some thoughts here. Other forces that are created and regulated by pressure. We talked about a bunch of these already, but how do we regulate pressure with fore aft? What changes in the ski snow interaction as we regulate fore aft pressure?
Well, it's going to change how the ski engages, whether you're on the tip, tail, or centered. Right?
Yeah.
Where the ski bends.
Mm-hmm. And how much it can bend. If we're only bending the back half, that's not a lot of bend. So it can't create a lot of force. If we get a ton of pressure to the tip, it can bend a lot, but we're not going to have much pressure to the back. So the tails are going to hold.
But that would be
Alright.
more the first fundamental, directing pressure along the length of the ski.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're very much interrelated. You know, again, in sharing my confusion over this, it seems like they're so closely interrelated. You know, where do we draw the line? Is really the
Welcome
the
to
first
hell,
four.
Gordon.
What's that?
Welcome to hell.
Yeah.
Soon you can't decipher one from the other anymore.
Are the first four all about managing speed and line, and we don't talk about what pressure does or the timing? So anyway, who wants to move on to doing some MA?
Sure.
So I've queued up some level 2 kind of mogul skiing for us to watch and talk about regulating pressure. And I kind of wanted to give a little bit of a challenge to us based on some of Jim's comments. And that challenge would be to focus on describing the ski snow interaction and then really talking about how flexion and extension movements impact it. And again, optional, and if it makes sense to you. Some of Chuck's same questions: where do the skis engage and release? How long is it? Which ski is more engaged? What part of the ski is engaged? And then talking about the flexion and extension, what body parts are flexing? how much and when. And then this was a point that Steve Edberg brought up a couple of weeks ago on a call I was on. Steve was the auditor at my level 3 MA this spring. But he was really encouraging us on the call to try and avoid our natural inclination to error detection and focus on describing. Does that make sense to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let me start out with some level 2 bump skiing. And can everybody see this still? There
Yep.
should be a skier in white pants and blue top, or teal, I guess. So this is off of the PSIA website, and it's level 2 bumps. So why don't we watch her for a few seconds? So, clearly she's not one of the top skiers in the PSIA, but she's held out in this video. Is doing a good job of demonstrating solid level 2 bump skiing. So as you're watching her, think about how to describe what's going on here in terms of ski snow and engagement and flexion extension movements. Or go in a different direction if you want to. I mean, this is for all of us to practice our MA skills. Buddy, you want to jump in?
So I see her at her initiation. She extends and rotates her skis fairly quickly to get them across the hill, most likely in order to help her control the speed as she hits the next bump.
Yeah, that's accurate, and it's really good at just a description. In terms of the ski snow interaction, what do you see?
I see a lot of air. I see a lot of air under her tips. I see a lot of space. It looks like she's behind her feet. She should be moving and pressing those skis down, the tip down a little more. She looks behind her feet because of I see the tips coming up, way up.
That sounds like error detection to me.
I
Yeah,
knew
that's
there'd
what
be
I was
somebody.
gonna say.
It's hard to resist, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Mm. Yeah, but it speaks to where her pressure is. It's where she's moving on the ski. She's not moving forward right there. I mean, she's not. I'm looking at where her pressure is, and
Sure.
she's back. That's how it looks to me.
Yeah, so
I would work with
Let's
somebody
describe it.
pressing that tip, moving over that, pulling that ski back under her body and moving that tip down into the snow. More pressure down with the ski tip.
kind of watching
That's how it looks to me.
ski engagement, like right here, you can see the skis starting to flex. So to me, the ski engagement is happening after the fall line. And it looks like there's more engagement of the outside ski than the inside ski.
I would say just the opposite. It looks like she's more on the inside ski. Right
Okay.
there.
I agree with Rebecca. Again, not to, let me see if I can spin it the right way. Because she's inside, it doesn't allow her to manage the pressure as efficiently as she could if she was skiing more outside ski to outside ski.
Sure. And not being argumentative, but I'm just watching here. To me, I would think if she had a lot more pressure on the inside ski, we'd see that inside ski tip start to diverge pretty quickly. And I don't know that I see that. I see it maybe a little bit here. Does that make
You could-
sense? I mean, yeah, it looks like she could be over that inside ski, but I'm watching it and I don't know that I see the evidence to support that.
Because look here and just, if you go like a second back, you'll see that the outside ski is practically off the ground,
Gordon,
right there.
I'm thinking, the reason I agree with Rebecca is because I'm thinking a little bit more reference angles. And I think she's a little more inside.
I think it's where you're seeing the turn, because as I'm seeing the turn, where else in that one we were just looking at, where was her weight? And I saw her weight on the outside ski. And I'm looking at,
So-
let's just look at this one right here.
See, there so that 2 turns back, I think she was on the inside, but these last 2 turns, and even this 3rd turn here, I
She's
think
on the outside.
she's on the
Mhm.
outside. So maybe it was just a 1-turn anomaly.
So let's back up just a little bit to what Scott said. So Scott said that there's a twisting motion in there. What he didn't say was, Scott, what is happening to the edges when she does that twisting motion? Are they high on edge? Is she on moderate edges, or is she barely on edges?
Well, they aren't engaged. She's
Yeah.
actually switching edges. That's her transition.
But does she
Hmm.
ever really get on a high edge?
No.
Not
No.
until about now.
Well,
Yeah,
do you
why? Why
really
would
want
she-
a high edge on
That's-
moguls?
That's exactly true. So why would you not want to have a high edge in the moguls? Is that going to make you
If
go
it's-
faster or slower?
Well, it depends. If you're
Yeah.
on a high edge and you're carving, you're going faster. If you're on
You're
a
gonna
high edge
go,
and skidding, you're going slower.
Exactly. So the point of I think what we're seeing is not really whether we're getting a lot of I see a lot of outside ski pressure, but I'm also seeing a hell of a lot of slipping and sliding. And the reason why is she's using that friction part, the sliding sideways, to help her manage her speed while she maintains a positive. She has
But I
nice
that's,
level shoulders, nice level pelvis in there. Yeah, she has a couple of turns where things get away, but like right there, that's really ideal. But she's never really getting on a high edge angle. And she's actually
But-
trying to stay off of them so that she can be more slippery and slidey. She gets caught there.
but you don't want high edge angles. You
There.
want to do skid a lot if you're in moguls.
No, who has the highest edge angles?
Racers.
Racers. Because they
Yeah.
gotta get down the hill as fast as they possibly can. They're trying to shorten everything up. When you're in the bumps, you don't want to be carving.
Right.
You want to be,
So,
you
Chuck, I
want
have
to
a
be
question for
skidding
you.
and sliding and everything else, but not carving.
So
So
I have
then
a
why the
question
high
for
edge
you,
angle?
Chuck. With the way she's skiing and all the sliding she's doing late in the turn, is she skiing defensively or offensively?
And one of the reasons why I bring up offensive or defense, because it really kind of helps you speak to the skier's intent. And I think she's intentionally skiing in a way that's allowing her to manage her speed.
Yep.
So it's neither
Yeah.
really offensive, but it's not really defensive. I mean,
Yeah, I think
Or-
she's
or-
trying to be precise and she's
Yeah.
managing her speed to allow. her
yeah,
to go.
or
Mhm.
she's offensively defensive. How's that, Scott? That help you any?
Well, that's why I was asking, because it's actually pretty good skiing. I mean, she's a little back and she's slipping around a bit, but she's
Mhm.
in control.
So again, on the context of this video is this is put out by PSIA as being solid level 2 instructor skiing. So should be pretty good skiing. Now,
Yeah.
who wants to talk about her flexion and extension movements? How big are they? When are they happening? Is the timing good? What body parts are flexing?
She's having her flexion at the initiation of the turn and her extension at the end of the turn, as we see it here.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's doing a very good job. It
Mhm.
looks like the bumps are fairly large. And I think she's getting thrown around somewhat in the terrain, and I think she's managing pretty well.
Yeah, most of the time her tips come right down.
Mhm.
See,
And she
How is
I
she-
want to
the-
disagree with that. I think I'm seeing the extension happen at the beginning of the turn and the heavy flex right at the end.
Here's the flexion.
Right.
Mhm.
And now she extends as she starts to turn. That's the way I see it.
Mhm.
I'm not saying I'm right. That's just the way I see it.
So what's she doing right here? She's extending, right?
She's extending as she's going into the turn.
Mm-hmm.
Pushing the skis down as she's coming over the mogul
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
that's a key
Extending
point there is.
into the
So
shaping
Scott, why
phase.
is she extending at the top of the turn?
She's extending because she's got to lighten the skis and she's got to start right. Okay, so now she hasn't started the turn. Now she's in the air, but she's extending to get those skis back on the snow.
Mhm.
Yeah, she needs that ski snow interaction.
Right.
So that I was gonna say, I guess something along the same lines is once she gets to the top, where else does she have to go? She's up unweighted to manage the pressure, right? The pressure is building on the backside of this mogul right there. She's up unweighting here. She has no other place to go but to extend and start the new
Mhm.
turn.
Yeah, so, more ideal, instead of starting her extension right here, if she had the capability, more ideal would be to see more extension lasting a little longer so that she's continuing to flex until about here and now starting to extend.
She extends too early, doesn't she?
Mhm.
She needs to be absorbing longer, sucking that mogul up, and then extend when she comes over the top. And that way she won't go in the air so much.
Yeah, and take a look at her pull right here. That look a little bit too long. Does that look like that's forcing her to come up too early?
It's totally too long for poles. That was
Yeah.
the first thing I noticed. Which is probably what's causing her to extend too soon.
Yeah, I think so too.
But I think again, our task was to be descriptive and we were all being prescriptive. We can't help it.
We can't help it, can we?
Hey,
Let's
And
talk
what I
about-
wanted to say also is she really is creating very nice angles.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, she does really nice angles. Most of the angulation's happening in the hip area, not in the knees, right? Because she wants to maintain
Look at that.
flatter ski, which is what's confusing everybody about outside ski pressure. But look at the pelvis. The pelvis is fairly level, and it's almost never vary from the shoulders at all.
And now she's extending when she should be.
Yeah, I think this is a really good example of level two because this is what we see in our level twos, right? They do extend early at the top of the turn, which robs them of the ability to really absorb kind of pressure at the end of the turn to kind of fall into the hole. But yeah, I mean, she had timed this maybe a little bit longer, as Gordon says, and then extend into the trough as the skis go over the top, then extend into the trough. It would smooth out the turn quite a bit. Now, the question is this deliberate or not? I mean, that's the number one question is we can't ask that question because we don't have it in front of us, right?
and this is just Jeff speaking, I think she's trying to be pretty damn deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so too.
she knows she's being filmed.
Well, I think the other thing about extension and flexion is she's really skiing trough to trough rather than, you know, top to top. So her choice of line kind of determines her technique as well.
So go into that a little deeper.
Okay, so if she was skiing top to top, you'd presumably see more flexion and absorption at the top of the mogul. But since she's skiing trough to trough, she essentially has to kind of extend into the trough.
Are you talking about more of a rounder blue line as opposed
Yeah,
to a
she's
tall
kind
line?
of having a round line, but she's going trough to trough, almost as if this were groomed terrain.
Mhm.
She's not going top to top, or she's not alternating tops and troughs for most
Right.
of her turns.
Yeah,
So
so
I think that part of what we're seeing is very deliberate in her choice of how to approach the moguls. And, you know, you could either go top to top or trough to trough.
mhm.
Is there Rebecca, I don't know, but I had never thought about the top to top, trough to trough. What do most skiers ski? Do they prefer one? Is there a benefit to one?
I think that there is. I mean, it's a preference. I personally like top to top. I'm not a very good mogul skier because it gives better control, because the troughs tend to be more skied on and tend to be icier.
Hmm.
I think there's a difference also between the west bumps out west and the bumps here in the east. In the east, our bumps are very icy and very, very tough to ski because of that. And so we in the east will generally ski top to top, and we are coached to stay out of the troughs because it is a very slick ice rink essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So I know for myself, when I've been out west, the bumps are softer and you can get into the trough and you're not in the kind of difficulty that we are back in the east.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree with Alona 100%. It's the shape of the bump and it's the condition of the snow. And I've skied out west where I've skied the troughs easily, just making little turns
Yeah.
through the troughs, simple. And here, can't do that at all. It's a different story. It just depends on how they're shaped and how the condition of the snow is.
I think Western moguls is essentially you just ignore them. Because they're so soft.
Go that far. One of the games we use for our mogul clinics is especially for the newer skiers, is a game called Troughs or Lob. And Rebecca, to your point, that's the green line, kind of skiing on the tops and finding the smoothest line possible.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's what is called a blue line, which is a little rounder up on the shoulders and putting your skis where in the West, we tend to have more snow. The troughs in the West, even the West, get harder. We call it ice. People from the East wouldn't. But the snow gets pushed up more on the shoulders and the top. And if you ski a little further outside a blue line, you can get your skis into grippy snow. And then the black line or the fall line would be kind of what she's doing, which is through the troughs.
Yeah, she's kind of doing a combination of blue line and black line. I would say she's not quite in a trough. She is angling across the trough.
Mm-hmm.
But right here, for example, She's not
Yeah.
in the trough. She's actually
No,
on the side of the
she's
next bump.
out to the side and going up on the
Right.
shoulder. Yeah, good.
So
point.
that's technically blue line. And then look, she's not going down towards us, which would be like the black line. She's cutting across the troughs so that she can manage her speed, right?
Which is
Allows her to turn her ski a little bit.
just really good technique, actually.
It is. And, you know, my experience teaching a lot of bumps is I always ask folks, what do you see when you're looking down a bump line? What do they see? What do they, you probably can guess what the answer is, right? They always, all they ever see is the parts where you don't want to be, which is the troughs. I mean, every time it's like, oh my God, I don't want to be in there. Well, don't go there. So make them look at the tops because that's where all the snow is. You know, and I'll say something along the lines of our moguls built through tears and fears of others, right? I mean, so stay on the parts where the snow is and not the parts where there is no snow. And for the green line, I'll teach kids the green line to fill the troughs up. So green line is basically side slipping down the sides of each bump, and you're really trying to slip the snow into the trough. And then you do the same thing on the next side, right? Slide down.
Makes sense.
And you slip down the side of the bump, and you're trying to fill all the troughs in, but you're still skiing across the tops of the bump. And then the blue line is, yeah, you're going over the top, but you're really using the next bump side to help you shape the turn, because it's way easier to do this kind of racetrack turn and then cut across the trough so that you're not stuck in it. But again, let's kind of go back to managing pressure. These are the things we do to keep us from getting in that situation where it's just constant pistoning, right? And probably acceleration through some kind of carving, right? That's where everybody is in a panic.
Mm-hmm. Well, we all know the importance of side slipping, right? But it seems to me more important than slide slipping is being able to rotate your ankles. Because if you can't rotate your ankles, you know, you're going to have a lot of trouble in the bumps.
Yeah, the ability to not just side slip, but you know, not just put the ski on edge. When we hear edge, we always think put the ski on edge, but it's also taking it off of edge or going negative direction, which is what I think she's doing a really nice job of, is flattening the ski and holding the ski as flat as she can, as long as she can. So she doesn't have a lot of built up pressure. And then when she's ready and in a good position to manage whatever pressure comes back to her, then she applies a little bit of edge, but she's not doing it through a lot of angulation, de-angulation. She's doing it mostly through her feet. Matter of fact, in a lot of cases, I don't even think she's using her feet that much. She's flattening with her feet. She's using a lot of more hip angulation than de-angulation, which allows her to feather, right? She can feel where the contact is, and then she can adjust her edges to her ankles, allow her to either increase pressure, which is going to allow her to squeeze out and make them turn, or she could flatten them and do a little bit more slidey, skiddy, right? Does that make sense?
Yep.
This is that ski-snow interaction part. That's vital to this fundamental.
Well, you know, I can see that even more with what you described as the ski line, which is basically, you know, this green ski line, which is basically a side slip. And by then you're really interacting with the snow through the side slip. But she's not as I'll say, taking the blue line. She has a very different approach than, I don't want to say side slipping, but she's just much more advanced in terms of her technique than that basic fundamental of side slipping.
Yeah, she's not side slipping like a Z, right?
Yes,
she's
exactly.
making a very deliberately round turn.
Yep.
which allows her time to make choices.
Mm-hmm.
If she was doing more of a slippery slidey or more side slippy, she would be taking more direct, which would shorten the amount of time that she has to make choices. And then if she was in a
She's
black
actually
line, she
doing
has no
fairly
time.
short to medium radius. You know, she's
Yeah,
doing
they're
short to medium radius turns.
they're kind of
She's
yeah, they're medium radius
traversing.
turns, right? And this, trust me, these are considered fall line bumps. She's making fall line turns.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so good stuff. I think we did a good job on her. Now, the next candidate we're gonna watch is not as skilled. And so again, let's try and resist the temptation to perform error detection, but focus on describing ski snow interaction and talk about how they're managing the ski snow interaction, what body parts are flexing or extending and how. So,
Gordon, can you make it bigger?
sure. That better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. All righty. So the text here is that appears on the screen is not my text, and I think they're kind of generous in their assessment.
Yeah, so he essentially passed. A 4
Yeah,
passing score.
yeah. I don't know that I saw anybody ski like that who passed their level 2 in the group I was in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Big
But
difference.
anyway, who wants to take a shot at this?
So I see there is divergence of the skis at turn initiation. Like right there.
So try and focus on regulating pressure. What kind of words come to mind on how he's regulating pressure?
Okay, he doesn't have enough aft to really use the tip of the ski. So I see that the skis are not bending as much because there's not enough weight towards the tip of the skis.
So his pressure management is one of jamming the brakes.
Yep.
He's managing the pressure as it's building up by jamming the brakes. And so obviously it's not a very efficient means by which he is managing pressure.
Because his weight is primarily aft, he's placing pressure at the heel at the end of the turn to control his speed and then to rotate the skis. But I think he has good ski snow interaction, but because his weight is aft, he's not having the type of flow in his movements that we would ordinarily like to see at a level 2.
He's trying to side slip as opposed to use his ankles more. And that's how he's stopping, right? Through the side slipping, jam on the brakes. That second phase that we saw earlier, that's missing.
So you'd say his skis are interacting with the snow after the fall line. And we're getting more interaction from the tails than the tips. Which ski is interacting more strongly? Or are they both, and when?
It looks to me like the inside ski has more interaction.
Sure.
There's very little weight on the outside ski. And there's a tipping of the body into the hill.
So when he gets interaction with the outside ski, because he eventually gets pretty good interaction.
Yeah, but
How's
that's
he-
till the very end of the turn.
He's doing that through flexion extension, or what would you call that movement? So I'd say he's creating the outside ski interaction by displacing the outside leg rather than a long leg, short leg relationship, or managing the flexion extension. So how's his overall flexion extension?
Is there any? It's just jam on the brakes and fall back a little bit.
Doesn't change.
How is he creating the turn? This is a good point. We just described it, right? So there's a little displacement. Maybe a little bit of like right there, a little bit of angulation at the knee to create a platform. We actually have a term for this. Anybody know what it is?
Would you say, though, he's turning one side a lot more, and I think it's to the right side, and just a little bit to the left side? It could be the formation of the hills.
Could be a side hill.
He has a longer finish, but again, yeah, it's hard to tell. What's that thing that he's doing to make him skip one side to the other? It's a rotary push-off. So right at the end of the turn, you can see it like right there. You'll see the knee kind of tuck in. It's his ability to create a platform that gives him something to push against to start the next turn. He does it pretty repeatedly.
Could you, if you don't mind, because my memory is not that great, a rotary push-off, could you define that again?
So basically, it's a down step.
Okay, a down step.
Basically, what you're doing in here, I got to turn my video on that way you can see. So basically, I can't even see what I'm doing. All right, basically, you're like, everybody see me all right? So you're here, and I want to get this over to here, right? So what do I do? I push down step here, create a platform that kind of propels me to the other side. That's what a rotary push-off is.
Gotcha, thank you. I mean,
I hope you're not driving.
Oh yeah, I am. What are you talking about?
But he just seems to be doing a rotary push-off on that one side. And I get it, maybe it's just the hill, but everything, this whole video has been the rotary push-off on the right side, or going to the left side, I should say. Bam. Bam.
It's pretty much on both sides.
Is it?
But you're correct. I think there is a longer finish when he goes to his left than he does to his right.
Yeah, I think it's partly a side hill because he's got a really prolonged left turn and really short right turn.
So now that you know what a rotary push-off is, where is a pressure spike?
On his downhill ski.
Yeah,
when he's almost stopping.
Right at the end of the turn, right? Right when he wants to go to the other side.
Yep.
You'll pressure spike on that outside foot, and he's creating it by putting the ski on more of an edge so that he can get more platform. And then he's putting a lot of pressure on that ski to ski pressure on that outside.
So he
ski.
steps off it onto his new.
Yeah, exactly.
Ski.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, kind of a stem turn. So in terms of flexion extension, what would be more ideal?
I think if he had a greater amount of ankle flexion, it would place his weight more fore than aft and give him more even ski to ski movement and pressure, and allow his skis to be moving outside ski to outside ski versus the rotary push off that that was described.
Yeah, so if he had more flexion at the ankle, he would have more interaction with the tip of the ski with the snow, and it would occur earlier
Yes.
in the turn.
Hmm.
So I think also just watching it in terms of pressure management. Yeah, I don't know if I can describe that. I'll talk about deflection and extension. I think more ideally there would be a greater degree of flexion extension of the legs. He's a little bit static. There's not a lot of flexion extension going on. He
Right.
stays in a fairly consistent degree of flex at the knees, and he's achieving the outside ski interaction more with displacement than by extension. So more ideally as he's coming into the mogul, he would flex more to absorb, keep the skis engaged with the snow longer, and then extend as he came over the mogul and create an earlier interaction with the snow.
So let's go back to that, Gordon. Where is his legs most extended? Right? You think you found it. That's where his legs are most extended. Where were Jen's legs most extended?
The end of the turn.
At the beginning of the turn. She was extending into the turn. And when she found the bump, she was absorbing the bump with her legs to
So
dissipate
isn't he
that
most, no, there we
pressure.
go, okay.
Yeah. So he's like really extended until he's got to push off again.
Yeah, I had trouble seeing where he was flexed and extended because, again, I think he's creating a lot of that with displacement rather than
Yeah, he's
flexing
using,
instead.
you're right. He's using a displacement movement. He's kind of doing it. But what he's looking for is a way to get from one side to the other. And is using a rotary push off instead of releasing, right? Ideally, we'd want to be able to release our edges downhill at the same time. That would be that rolling of the knees or rolling of the femoral bones to start the next turn so we can relieve pressure and flatten the skis. He's not doing that. He's kind of bouncing from one ski to the other. And what happens is that, well, now we're going to go back to that intent, right? What is his intent? Is it offensive or defensive?
I think he's not defensive, really.
Yeah, I would second that.
I think he's more defensive than he is offensive.
I
He's
would
trying to
not
find-
say that.
He's trying to find spots to slow down.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Rebecca, you didn't think that?
I'm thinking that he feels pretty confident. His turns are linked. They're not, it's not like stop and go. They really are linked. So I think that his technique may not be ideal, but he's not skiing defensively.
No, it's not totally defensive. What I'm saying is, and this is the reading that I'm seeing when I'm watching him is that he only starts to make the new turn when he's comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Because he needs that down step to do it, and that requires a little bit of time to do it. So he waits until he finds a spot to do that. That's a little bit more defensive than
Mhm.
offensive. So,
Well,
but
I think-
again, remember, the point is not whether it's offensive or defensive, it's speaking to the intent of the skier. I'm looking for the skier's intent.
I
So-
think what it looks to me like the difficulty and the appearance to me, I agree with you, Chuck, that he looks defensive, is that this is off piste and there's variability in the snow conditions. And I think he's lacking the confidence in his skills to be able to adjust to the terrain and the variability that it's presenting to him.
Yeah, I mean, he's successful, right? He got 4 out of 6.
Yes, yes,
And-
absolutely. So,
He did what he
He's
needed to
also-
do.
He's also
Yeah.
not shopping. He maintains a line.
right.
So from that perspective, I think he's being more offensive than defensive because he's not like traversing. He keeps a steady line.
Mhm.
So I would throw out an idea here. When somebody's making that rotary push off or really creating a high edge angle to finish the turn, their first move for the new turn is their center of mass going uphill. They're setting an edge and they're pushing up the hill a little bit. I think how I would tend to describe somebody skiing offensively is their first move is downhill. Instead of ramping the skis up onto a big edge to finish the turn, they're finishing the turn by releasing, and their whole movement is going to be down the hill. I'm going to put this up to my camera. So this figure right here, this is Tom Gelly initiating a turn. You see how his torso is moving down the hill before the skis have changed edges. To me, that's a really offensive movement. He's plunging his center of mass, he's toppling it down the hill, and he's confident that his skis will come around and he can maintain pressure on that outside ski and then to stop his body from tipping over with angulation in the outside ski. Does that make sense to anybody else?
Well, that speaks to his ability to also manage the pressure at the end of the turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This guy creates a large pressure spike at the end of the turn. And Tom rolls his knees over, which flattens his knees, which essentially takes pressure off the skis. And again, another guy who's a master in this is Jonathan Blue or JF Bouvier. Both of them are masters of finding that one spot where the pressure becomes too great and then rolling over right before it spikes up on, finding rolling into the next.
Did finish.
But he has more ankle flexion than the previous one, so that he does create more angles and doesn't have as much convergence at the beginning of the turn.
Mm-hmm.
What body parts are flexing, extending to manage pressure?
Seems to be mostly knees.
Yeah. That's what it looks like to me.
Seeing a little hip flexion extension as well,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and some ankle.
I'm kind of
But-
encouraged
but-
because these are passing grades.
Yeah, me too.
Not what I had expected.
Yeah.
I want
but I-
that examiner.
Go west, Rebecca,
So-
go west.
Yeah. So a couple of times here, I notice him kind of folding at the waist a little bit. It doesn't happen every time, but that's another way we can manage pressure is we can flex or extend at the spine. I was really surprised to notice those words in the fundamental. But one of the calls I was on, they did call out when somebody really folded at the waist and flexed their spine a lot to manage pressure. You know, just more words to describe the flexion extension movements.
It's interesting because he starts out having really good ankle flexion, and then as he gets down, he loses that.
Well, there's that one turn where his tails come off the snow and he throws his skis. And I
Yeah,
think he only does that once.
Because here he just loses it.
yeah, I think he's a lot like the other skier in that he's quite upright at the hips. And,
Yeah.
you know, even if he has good ankle flexion, if he's open at the hips, he's going to direct more pressure to the tails.
Yeah, it's putting him back.
Do we know where this is?
I do not.
Given the
Okay.
depth of the snow, it looks like it's out west.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
snow looks pretty
Right.
forgiving.
PSI Intermountain. So that would mean Utah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're about 5 minutes from the end. Let me pull up one more slide to kind of get us heading in the direction of next week. So for next week, we'll get more into this. The fifth fundamental, beyond flexion and extension, being able to describe pressure management beyond that. And as Jim Shaw put it, the second part, you know, again, the Alpine Technical Manual mentions rotation, edge angle, extension and flexion, fore aft, and ski to ski. So to me, it's really saying that the fifth fundamental is about the other four fundamentals plus flexion and extension movements. And Scott, I think you were on the call with Chris Caruso a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Chris's line of discussion was that 1 + 2 + 3 + 4, or the first four fundamentals, equal the fifth fundamental. Any thoughts on that?
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, what are the kinds of things we're trying to do when we manage pressure with the other fundamentals?
One of the things I was thinking about earlier is right along this line. When we make a good dynamic turn and we tip our skis on edge early, we have to use inclination and angulation, or we're not going to be able to manage the force. And that's, to me, that's how you know, an indication how they work together. As soon as you tip that ski on edge, you dramatically increase the forces, and you have to balance that centripetal force. The only way you're going to do that is to align yourself more over the outside ski, and you're only going to be able to do that in a balanced position if you have inclination and angulation.
Right. And you need one more thing there too, right? You need to have the timing of your flexion extension movement.
Right.
To set you up to get pressure to the early in the ski. So, you know, my struggles with short radius turns are directly related to how do I make sure I'm getting the flexion extension movement timed right, so that as I start the turn, I'm extending and creating pressure, as opposed to still or just finishing up extension and relieving pressure by starting to flex again too early.
Just a quick question. Dirt is, what's that? Duration, intensity,
Rate and timing.
Rate and timing. That's what I was missing. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, you bet. Yeah, let's bring it to a close and we'll start up from here next time.
Yeah.
And feel free to email me if there are any things you want to make sure that I get in the discussion. I think the next discussion is September 10th.
Great
My
job,
cor-
Gordon. Thank you.
Hey, thank
for an
you.
excellent talk.
Yeah,
Thank you
Gordon,
very
great,
much.
great, great job.
Hey, thanks a
Good night.
lot.
Thank you,
Take
Gordon.
care. Mhm.